This pro-liberty podcast is brought to you by the Health Ranger Store. Visit healthrangerstore.com/MAGA. That's MAGA, like Make America Great Again. Thank you for your support. There's only one way to stop a pandemic that is very infectious and that is carried by people who don't know they're carrying it because it's in the incubation period, and yet it's still contagious in the incubation period. The only way to stop this, frankly, no matter what nation you're talking about, China, America, whatever, is to get people to all stay home. In other words, you either force them to stay home or you convince them to stay home. I don't know what the case may be, but everybody has to stay home. Now, okay, let's suppose that it's realized by all the world governments and health authorities, yep, that's the answer, just get everybody to stay home. I'm here to tell you that the average person has not thought through the consequences of what that means for society, because it is the complete breakdown of modern society if everybody stays home. Now, here's why. But let me backtrack for a second. Hong Kong University, a team of researchers there, says that there are 44,000 people infected with coronavirus in China right now. The official numbers from China are, well, as of a day ago, they were 2,900 infected and something like 50 dead. Today, one day later, it's 4,200 infected and 106 dead as of the time of this recording. It's probably bigger now that, there'll be higher numbers now by the time you hear this. Check NaturalNews.com for the latest numbers. We've got them up on top of the website now. So in one day, you have an increase of almost 50% in China. And also China, by the way, is announcing an urgent expansion of 100,000 hospital beds in the Wuhan region there. So if you only have 4,000 people infected, why would you need 100,000 more hospital beds? Clearly, the numbers are much, much higher than what's being publicly reported. In any case, this team of researchers from Hong Kong University said that the only way to stop this is to force everybody to stay home. In fact, the researcher there called for, quote, draconian measures. Those are his words. Draconian measures. Force everybody to stay home. Nobody goes to work. Nobody travels. Nobody visits family or friends. That's the only way to do this. And apparently you have to maintain that for weeks. At least 2 weeks, maybe longer, depending on how it's spreading in the homes. Maybe a month. Okay, so maybe several months, depending on what's happening with the virus. I ask you this question. Let's suppose that you're listening to this and you live in America. Most of our listeners do, but we've got listeners all over the world. No matter where you live, though, how do you get tap water? Well, there are people who go to work at the water treatment plant to keep the pumps running and to keep the valves running and the computers running. How do you get electricity? Well, you get electricity because there are people who go to work at the coal-fired power plants or the natural gas or the propane plants or whatever it is, hydroelectric dams. People go to work and they fix machines and they monitor machines. And there's behind the coal-fired power plants, there are trains that deliver coal. And the coal comes from coal mines. And there are miners who show up to work at the coal mines and run the machines to bring you the coal that provides the electricity that gives you lights and heat and, cook stoves, whatever, internet access on your computer. The point is, society functions by people going to work. People going to work for the local police force or the local hospitals, what have you. If the only way to beat a pandemic is to tell everybody to go home and stay home until further notice, ask yourself, what happens to society? In fact, what happens to your internet access? What happens to your bandwidth, your mobile phone? What happens to the cell towers and the telecom infrastructure? The answer is, it craters. It goes down and it stays down hard. Because all of these systems, whether we're talking about medicine or telecommunications, the power grid, emergency responders, all these systems, food deliveries, grocery stores, they all depend on people showing up and going to work. And a lot of these systems, like grocery stores and so on, and fuel deliveries, depend on, well, truckers going to work and driving their trucks down the highway to deliver all the supplies to these various cities. Well, we already know that truckers are smart people, adaptable people, and survivors who aren't going to just roll into a quarantine zone. And also, if the order is for everybody to stay home, how do truckers drive their trucks? How do cashiers go work at the grocery store? How does a banker go to the bank and work the register at your local bank? How do hospital workers go to work if they're ordered to stay home, and so on and so forth? It's just that, I mean, it seems obvious as I'm stating it here, but most people haven't thought about the ramifications. Where does fuel come from? How does your pharmacy function? You know, it's not magic. People are working there, obviously, but people have to deliver the goods and the groceries and the fuel and the coal for the power plant and so on and so forth. When people don't show up, society breaks down. Now, China is already facing an economic bubble. If they tell people to go home and don't work and don't run the factories, what do you think is going to happen to that bubble? It's very likely to collapse, causing an economic catastrophe in China. So China has a real conundrum on their hands. They've got to keep people going to work to keep the factories running, to keep the exports going. That's their main business, is exports, manufacturing. But if they do that, the virus will spread. So what has China done? What is their short-term solution for this? They have limited the availability of coronavirus testing kits to make sure that no one's reporting infections. This is actually published by the Epoch Times, that China is creating artificial scarcity in the diagnostic kits so that people can't report the infections. Wow, what a great communist idea, Well, it's something Bernie Sanders or AOC would come up with. Bernie Sanders, why are there so many viruses being reported in China? And one of his advisors says, well, sir, there's apparently too many testing kits that are testing positive results. Well, we've got to shut off the testing kits to keep those numbers lower. Right? That's kind of the way communists think. Instead of dealing with reality, they like to legislate against reality by having tyrannical authoritarian control. So that's what China has done. Oh, there aren't that many infections. Ha! What, me worry? There are no infections. See? Small numbers, just a few thousand. Yeah, because no one can get their hands on the testing kits and the sample kits, to send off to the labs. By the way, that same article mentioned that China is currently burning through 100,000 hazmat bodysuits a day. 100,000 suits a day. Now, a couple of interesting things about this. You would figure that, let's say on average, a healthcare worker would use one suit a day, right? I mean, I guess they're not changing suits multiple times a day, are they? So let's say one person, one day, one suit. It's a pretty safe assumption, right? On average. Well, that means there's 100,000 people who are frontline healthcare workers in China who need to wear these bodysuits, protective suits, right? But China says there's only about 4,000 people who are infected. Well, now that number is 4,500. As I was recording, it's gone up to 4,500. Actually, 4,559. I guess this thing's going freaking parabolic while I'm talking here. But it's insane. Just watching this chart explode while I'm talking. But if they're going through 100,000 suits a day and they only have, now 4,500 people infected, that doesn't make any sense, does it? Why would you need 100,000 people to treat only 4,000 something people? Doesn't make sense, does it? Why would you need 100,000 new hospital beds in the region to treat 4,000 people? You wouldn't. Oh, and by the way, China manufactures these full body suits, the Tyvek suits. There are manufacturers in mainland China. They have a total manufacturing capacity of 30,000 suits per day, which is a lot. That's a lot of suits. That's a lot of labor. But it's 70,000 suits a day short of what China needs now. And this is just in the early phases of the outbreak of a pandemic that doubles the number of infected people roughly every 7 days. So if they need 100,000 suits a day now, a week from now, they're going to need, 200,000 suits a day. But they only make 30,000 suits a day. And there's not that much capacity in the world to just keep buying up suits, because they don't exist, by the way. I think I own like 50 of them. I've got a giant crate of hazmat suits. No kidding. Part of my long-term pandemic preparedness. But if they need 200,000 suits a day a week from now, and then I guess 400,000 suits a day the next week, if we use the same projections here, and they can only make 30,000 suits, then obviously they're going to have a lot of frontline healthcare workers that are going to be suitless. They're going to have no suits. So then you might ask, well, what happens then if they have no suits? Well, they get infected. So then you have, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 healthcare workers who are all getting infected. And then there's an 8-day incubation period on average. So they get infected but don't know it. And then they spread the disease to other patients who are dropping into the hospital, wondering if they've got the virus. Maybe they have a fever or diarrhea or something. They're stopping in because they're under orders from the authoritarian regime. If you have a fever, you have to show up at the hospital. So they show up. They get infected by the healthcare worker, right? This thing then begins to spiral into insanity pretty quickly. This exponential growth gets out of control. At some point, then the Chinese government just says, well, we're just going to have to order everybody to go home and stay home for the next month. So they do. Everybody go home. And then what happens over the next month? Economy crashes. Exports crash. Production crashes. Food rots in the fields. And then we're dealing with economic consequences. And in the case of China, cultural revolution type of stuff. Angry people rising up. Hong Kong uprising spreads to other areas. Now imagine this in the United States. Right now, the CDC says, don't worry, there's only 130 patients we have under observation. We're going to observe them. We're going to send in observers who may or may not understand how to put on and remove biohazard suits, by the way. That's a U.S. hospital specialty right there. Just like they did in that Dallas hospital during the Ebola outbreak. They brought in that patient, stuck her in a Dallas hospital. First thing, she infects a nurse in the Dallas hospital. And then they inject the nurse with all these toxic substances that cause her permanent kidney damage. That nurse later sued the hospital. Did you know that? Sued the hospital for practically killing her with all the drugs because they didn't give her proper training. She didn't know how to, wear the gloves and the masks and the suits and the face mask and everything. You have to know how to take it off correctly, not just put it on. Anybody can put that stuff on, but taking it off without infecting yourself is a whole different ballgame. And there's a whole procedure, a containment procedure. How do you take that stuff off without infecting yourself? It's actually way harder than you think. In fact, a friend of mine told me a good way to test that is to go ahead and suit up. Suit yourself up and then have a friend spray you with pepper spray. Like the self-defense pepper spray, bear spray. Just spray you down with pepper spray all over your face and your neck. And, you're in the protective suit at this point when you're doing this insane drill. You're in the suit and you get sprayed with pepper spray. Now, if you have put the suit on correctly, you will not feel any burning sensations because the pepper spray should not get through your suit. If you feel burning around your wrists or your neck or something, well, guess what? You didn't put on the suit correctly because the pepper spray shouldn't have been able to get through. But here's the fun part. After this, take all that stuff off and try not to end up screaming and crying and drooling with tears just coursing out of your eyeballs, because you will end up getting pepper spray all over your face because people don't know how to take these things off. It's harder than you think. Try it. No, look, as a disclaimer, at your own risk. But if you really want to test your skills on this, try it. You will discover, number one, that pepper spray hurts a lot, especially if you get it in your eyes. or in your crotch area, for example, you just got to learn. You will never forget that lesson. But not only does it hurt like hell, but it's very, very difficult to get everything off of you without recontaminating yourself. I just mention all this because when they talk about, oh, we're going to have CDC observers and healthcare workers and nurses and frontline people, I always think, yeah, who trained these people? Because we know that so many departments of the government are totally incompetent and in many cases scientifically illiterate. I don't know. I mean, these are people who think that men can become women, by the way. Just so you know, these are the same people who believe in transgenderism. They think that when babies are born, they have no gender and that a doctor assigns them a gender, like randomly picking flipping a coin or whatever. Heads, you're a boy. Tails, you're a female. I don't know. And they just assign them. Shazam, boom, you have a vagina. Like, this is how they think the world works. These people. Are you telling me these people are going to be observing the microbiological environment, the threat arena of epidemiological catastrophe? These are the observers? The people who think that women can be sperm donors and men can have babies? These people, seriously. Oh my God, we're so effing doomed. If these are the people. And yes, those are the people. Those are the people. So, at some level, I think that humanity has already gone past the point of survivability, and that this virus is just sort of, I mean, even though it's a man-made virus, it's a biological weapon. The fact that it's being unleashed accidentally, Murphy's Law, is kind of like God saying, well, you're going to have to deal with the mess you made. You're going to have to reap what you sow, right? This is the human suicide cult carrying out the suicide, in a sense. But to get to my bigger point, if people don't show up to work, everything that you rely on in society stops functioning. Everything breaks down. Everything breaks down. What system in society operates today without requiring people to show up and work? I mean, there's not that many systems, especially nothing involving, civilization and humankind. Now, you could say, well, rain works without human intervention. Yes, it does. Thank God for that, because if humans were required to make it rain, we would have already been wiped out long ago. Thank God that condensation works based on the laws of physics. Thank God that there's warm air that evaporates water out of the oceans, takes it into the clouds. The clouds move inland, and then there are changes in pressure, barometric pressure, as well as temperature that cause water to fall out of the sky. Because again, if humans were required to make that happen, it wouldn't work. Thank God there are some things that are just natural, like gravity. Thank God water runs downhill, right? Because if humans were involved, it would break. But everything that's run by humans does break. Everything from vehicles and gas stations and transportation to telecommunications and computers, even emergency communications, radios. Even though they're pretty low tech, they still break too. Hospitals. Stuff goes wrong all the time. Heck, hospitals get locked down with Bitcoin, ransomware. They can't even use any of their computers until they pay the Bitcoin fee. That happens too. So I'm telling you, society barely functions when people do show up. If people are forced not to show up, society cannot function at all. And if that happens, then we collapse back to basically the 1700s, mostly an agrarian society with very few specialists and also very little carrying capacity in terms of population. The United States might be able to support, 20 million people in an agrarian society. What was the population of America in 1776? I'd have to look back, but it was just probably a few million, not a huge number. I'm guessing 20 million. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's 5 million. Maybe it's 30. I don't know, but it's a much lower number than what it is today. You can count on that. Why? Well, you have a collapsed society, basically an agrarian society. People grow their own food. You don't have the mass production of the combustion engine, You don't have the mass production of specialization, the efficiencies of computers and logistics and just-in-time delivery systems, all these things. That's what makes food cheap enough to support an exploding population. That's why if you look at the human population from the mid-1700s to today, it's a parabolic curve. It skyrockets upward. What was the world population in 1750? Probably just a few million people. In fact, let me look this up. All right, here we go. Just as I thought. The first census of the United States in 1790 showed a population of just under 4 million people. Just as I thought. Small number of millions. That's what we're going to collapse back to, or close, sort of venturing toward that, maybe 20 million people. So 20 million people in America, that's more than 90% collapse of the American population. I know. I'm saying if everybody goes home and stays home and things start to collapse, then you have no food production and delivery and fuel deliveries and all these things. And then the order would probably go out, well, everybody has to show up and go to work. Okay. So everybody shows up and goes to work, and the pandemic spreads, everybody gets infected, then you have a 15% die-off rate. So that turns out to be the best case. So if we lose only 15% of the population, with, by the way, another 12% of the survivors having permanent severe heart damage and other secondary infections and liver damage and so on for more people, like that's the best case if this thing gets out. The worst case is a collapse of modern society. This is how civilizations rise and fall, folks. Pandemics, big volcanoes, asteroids striking the planet. This is how history changes drastically, without warning. It's called the Day of Reckoning. Some people believe this is how God cleanses the earth, the great flood, things like that. Book of Revelation. I'm not a preacher, so I'm not going to preach about that, but some people believe that's what's happening. Sodom and Gomorrah, meteors from outer space striking the planet, setting cities on fire. And I don't know if you've read the book of Revelation, but pretty much describes a nuclear war in the Middle East, by the way, at some point. Nuclear war. Nuking a city in Syria called Damascus, if I'm remembering correctly. In any case, we're in for some interesting times, shall we say. And yet, the average person in America seems to be totally infatuated with, oh my God, Kobe Bryant died in his helicopter. Okay, I'm sorry, but frankly, there are bigger issues to deal with here. Oh my God, the Super Bowl is going to be on. Make sure we have enough chips and salsa. Super Bowl's coming. You think you're on that team that's out there on the field? You think you're part of that team. No, you're not part of that team. You are a consumer of entertainment. You are not participating in a team sport. You are not an athlete, or at least not a professional one. You cannot do what they do. Those guys are 350 pounds and can run twice as fast as you or I. They're freaks of human nature. They're incredible athletes, but you're not one of them, okay? Don't pretend that you are on their team. We won. You didn't do jack except eat chips and salsa. All right, I'm being a little satirical here, but it's like, what's the point with humanity, with people just so brain dead that it's just like lemmings running off a cliff at this point. This pandemic is going parabolic, and the average person is like, where's my Starbucks latte? And it's like, really? What's wrong with you people? You should be buying water filters. You should have a bug out plan. You should know how to use a compass and a map if you don't already. You should lube your AR-15 and make sure that it's sighted in. Change the batteries on your red dot sight. Those are some of the things you should be doing instead of watching football. But that's just my opinion. Me as one of the people who will survive among perhaps millions who will not. That's just the way it goes. Some people are kind of wired to survive, and some people were born to basically just be collateral damage, I suppose, in the history of humanity. It's up to you to choose which group you belong to. That's why I do this. That's why I do these podcasts and publish the articles, because I want I want to see more people survive. But I also realize the futility of that effort as we live in a society where people are brain dead and disconnected and suicidal, mentally ill. Those people won't make it, but they will cheer when their team wins the Super Bowl. And I guess that's really important stuff. But thank you for listening. I'll keep publishing as long as I can, no matter what happens. And let's pray that this whole thing just goes away. Let's just pray that we wake up tomorrow. The communist Chinese have beat the virus. New infections, 0. Yes. We've conquered it, announces President Xi. We, the communists, have beaten Mother Nature. I hope we see that headline, but I highly doubt we're ever going to see that headline because communism doesn't work. It's more disastrous than even democracy. Communism does not work to control pandemics. You roll the dice of communism versus Mother Nature freaking wins every time. They're not going to beat this unless they decide to just cull the whole population. Maybe at some point they'll just treat the Chinese people like they treat all those pigs, that they just mass slaughter all the pigs, hundreds of millions of pigs. They just bulldoze them into a ditch. Maybe they'll do that to their own people in China because that's kind of their human rights record, isn't it? Organ harvesting, gulags, torture chambers, rape industries, kidnapping. Maybe they'll just bulldoze their people and then they'll call it victory. Yeah, I would not be surprised if that's what happens. Maybe they'll just torch a city. They'll just nuke their own cities or something. Who knows? These people are insane. They're communists. There's nothing they won't do to try to maintain, the aura of fake credibility on the international stage. But I've said enough on this podcast before I get into even more trouble with salsa manufacturers and sports fans. So thank you for listening. This is Mike Adams here, the Health Ranger, naturalnews.com. Be safe, stay informed, get prepared. I know you have a lot of choices of where to get your superfoods and supplements, personal care products, and so on. To find all these solutions and more, just go to healthrangerstore.com/MAGA, M-A-G-A. healthrangerstore.com/MAGA, as in Make America Great Again. You'll find hundreds of solutions there that can enhance and help protect your health. Again, that's healthrangerstore.com/MAGA. At the Health Ranger Store, we are a pro-liberty, pro-life, pro-freedom, pro-America manufacturer and direct distributor. We sell direct to customers, offering extraordinary values on these products. Lab tested and verified. We test all of our products for bacteria, E. coli, salmonella, yeast and mold, heavy metals, lead, cadmium, arsenic, mercury, much more. Also glyphosate, and herbicide and other pesticides and herbicides are being added to our testing procedure to make sure that we bring you safe, verified, clean supplements that you just don't get anywhere else. I mean, Amazon.com is a joke compared to us. The Wall Street Journal even did a story exposing the thousands of contaminated, illegal, banned, toxic supplements and products that Amazon sells. We wouldn't sell that because we have ethics, we have morality, we're honest, we have integrity as a manufacturer and a provider of these products. Check us out, healthrangerstore.com. Over 700 different products are available right now. High-end supplements, superfoods, personal care products, even fragrance-free products that are eco-friendly for your home, such as laundry detergent, body soap, dishwasher detergent, and many other products. You'll find just an incredible assortment at healthrangerstore.com, and most importantly, your purchases there help support our ongoing efforts to spread the message of liberty and freedom and pro-life, respecting life in all its forms, and having a nation and a world that operates with ethics and morality so that we might have a sustainable human civilization, not one that's collapsing in destitution and suffering, which is what the radical left and the communists want to bring about. So support us and we support humanity. healthrangerstore.com. I thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. If you want to support our mission, visit us at healthrangerstore.com for the world's largest selection of lab-verified superfood and nutritional products for healthy living. It's at healthrangerstore.com.